Welcome. My name is Shemi, and this is my podcast, The Miracle of Abstraction. Today, my guest is Diletta Martinelli. She is a mathematician specializing in higher dimensional birational geometry, an assistant professor at University of Amsterdam, a global mathematics educator, and my PhD supervisor. Thank you for being here, Diletta.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me.
So my first question is to break the ice. So what is the last thing that you learned in mathematics that you went like, whoa?
I don't know. Maybe it's not necessarily a mathematical theorem, but lately I'm trying to learn a little bit about the possible ways of automizing mathematics, and I'm trying to learn a little bit about Lean, that it's probably gonna be a new tool that has the potential to revolutionize how we think about mathematics, how we do mathematics, or how we learn mathematics. So I don't know, it's not a theorem, but I think it's something in the process of doing mathematics that caught my attention recently, I think.
Oh, and what are your steps towards this?
Well, try to maybe learn a little bit more how to use Lean. I'm really absolutely ignorant at the moment, so try to learn a little bit about it. And yeah, my specific interest maybe is that, again, it has this potential to maybe think completely how we learn mathematics, how we do math, and I don't know, maybe in 10 years' time, even a mathematics curriculum in a university could be very different if students learn how to use this new tool from a very early age. And since I'm working with mathematical community also that are a bit more remote and not in the mainstream, I'm also trying to understand if it's possible to use it as a tool that could help also mathematical community that maybe are a bit outside of the main circle and don't have necessarily access to the same network of opportunities that other mathematical community have.
As far as I understand, Lean is to formalize our proofs, but how could it improve our communication with each other?
No, not the communication. I think it's really more, now it's still very early stages, but I think it's more than in the future it might have really the potential to be a tool also for mathematical students. I don't think it's there yet, but I think it has the potential for it. And so it's more maybe in the future it could really be a tool to access information and potentially have facilitation towards mathematical research. Also for, could potentially become something that makes mathematical research more accessible. So I don't know, maybe it's just at the moment it's purely speculation, but these are, again, you ask for the things that are catching my attention at the moment, and these are the things that are catching my attention.
So these are new stuff.
Yeah, absolutely speculation.
The frontier.
Might lead to an
Okay, so that's the frontier. So let's take a step back, because I have a very serious question. I know that you're Italian.
Yes.
But are you an Italian algebraic geometer?
Yes, absolutely. So I think that my love for mathematics started really with the projective geometry and study conics in P2 and something, so really all the work of the Italian school. So I think I really have an Italian flavor of algebraic geometry. My interest and my taste is really Italian for mathematics. Okay. Yeah.
What Italian algebraic geometry is for you, the classical one?
I think that I think it starts maybe with projective geometry. So having this ambient space that is the projective space and try to study the geometric object of them. And I think that it's pretty concrete. In the word of algebraic geometry, that of course, again, it's a miracle of abstraction, but I think that specifically it has a bit more concrete flavor. And and you really study what are, how pencil of conics behave,
Yeah,
or how
we can draw it.
Yeah, we can draw things. We can really play around with the projective curves and try to study their properties. And so I think that's what it means to me, that you can really play a little bit more with drawings, and you're so it's slightly more concrete. Than I think after Grothendieck there was this huge kind of more abstract way of thinking about algebraic geometry that, of course, makes it a much more powerful tool in general. But the Italian style remains a little bit more concrete. And
yeah, for me, the modern iteration of this Italian site is like the minimal model program. It's like a lot of technical but very concrete stuff.
Yeah.
And could you tell us more about this direction of minimal model program? It is really related to what is your expertise?
Yeah, so my field of research is really called birational geometry and the minimal model program. And I think that you're right. At the bottom, there is a very concrete question. We have this geometric object that are defined by polynomial equation that we call algebraic varieties. And we want to classify them, reach a classification. And this is a very, I think, natural instance of mathematics. It's something that we do all the time. We have a certain set of objects that we want to understand, and understanding the object means try to classify them. And it started classically with the work of the Italian school, the classification of algebraic surfaces. And then there was this modern version of the theory that was started by Shigefumi Mori in the 90s, that it's called the minimal model program. And the idea is that if you want to classify object, of course, one of the first things that you have to do is find the notion of equivalence, because you have infinitely many objects. So if you want to have finitely many classes, you have to decide when do we put two objects into the same equivalence class. And if you work up to birational classification, birational equivalence, you have many objects inside the same class, many more than what you would have if you ask isomorphism, for instance. That is a much more rigid notion. But it also, and so this is it has the advantage, you have less classes because you have a weaker notion of equivalence, but inside the equivalence class you have many objects. And so you want to find a representative for the class that has better properties than the other. And and this is where the word minimal comes into play. You want to have a representative that is minimal. And so even in common language, when you say that something is minimal, means that it's simpler than all the others, but also means that you can build every other object in the class starting from the minimal object. So the minimal model program, it's a program, so it has this algorithmical nature. In a finite series of steps, you would like to find the minimal object inside the class. So that's the idea.
Thank you. And how are we doing in realizing this program?
So over the complex number, much is known. So if you work in general characteristic 0, much is known. There was this biggest breakthrough a few years ago, and now the minimal model program is known for a particular class of algebraic variety called varieties of general type. But in characteristic P, then the situation is much more open. So then there are a few results. The situation is well understood for surfaces, and there are results for threefold, but in general, the situation is much more open.
Yeah, positive characteristic has this flavor
of
being surprising.
Yeah, and as I said, the idea is that you want to find the minimal object in the class in a finite number of steps, and this idea that really you can have a kind of algorithm that arrive to the minimal variety in a finite number of steps, this issue of termination, this is still wide open, even in characteristic 0. So that's one of the biggest conjecture that is still open in the field.
Okay. And how are you contributing right now? What in this program? There is still plenty to be done.
Yeah. I think there are always two directions. Try to really establish the steps of the program. Try to finish all the this kind of foundational way. Really have a program that works in every case. But the beauty of the program is that it allows you to kind of reduce all the possible type of algebraic variety to like 3 main building blocks. And the idea is then try to study the property of the building blocks, then you can really reconstruct the geometry of any algebraic varieties. And at the moment, the project I'm working on are more focusing on trying to understand properties of some of these building blocks. So.
Yeah, I while preparing my questions, I saw that in preparation there is K-free surfaces and stability.
Yeah, exactly.
How is it going? Is it exciting?
Yeah, I think now since several years now, there is this new tools that we have to study a special type of variety called hyperkähler variety that you can interpret as moduli space of object on a K3 surface with respect to a notion of stability. And now there is this new notion of birational stability condition that has a lot of advantages, and it's really an exciting direction because I think it's bringing together people working more in the birational community like me and people that were always more interested into stability of vector bundles, stability of complexes now. And so you have this, it's always nice when you have two kind of different communities coming together, I think. There's a richness and so
yes, working together always brings opportunities to discover new things at the intersections and create new.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is the present. There was the big past. There was the future. How did you join all this adventure in minimal model program? What's your story?
I think for me, I was always, my love for mathematics was always a love for geometry from the very beginning. I wasn't sure about what I wanted to do at the end of high school, and I went to a talk for a popular audience by a mathematician that was called The Job of a Geometer. And actually, he was done by a professor, Professor Marco Arndeiratta, who is a professor in birational geometry, so exactly in the place where I ended up working. And so during all my studies, I actually was always, so the idea that I would end up working in geometry was something that was clear from the beginning because I didn't like anything else, basically. So
no arithmetic, no algebra?
No, it's also true that I think again, because it's a bit of an Italian subject,
yes,
you're exposed to a lot of classical algebraic geometry if you're doing an
students of students
if
of
you're
masters.
Doing an undergrad in Italy, then there was never a lot of number theory of anything in arithmetics, for instance, or I don't know, now I'm thinking that discrete math and graph theory and combinatorics is very cool, but I never had any courses on that, so it's and so I was doing my master in Pavia, and I wanted to continue in algebraic geometry, and the professor I was working with suggested a few names, including the place in London, and so I applied at Imperial College, and I got accepted, and but I had no idea what the minimal model was, the minimal model program was before I started. So
after 4 years of my PhD, I don't know. Okay, so it was like just living, and there was this inspiration from high school.
Yeah, the fact that I was fascinated by geometry, that was clear from the beginning. I don't know, I'm very visual, so I think that has drawn me to geometry in the first place. Also, I think it's, for me, geometry is really a bit of an exploration of the world. You look around you and you try to describe the world that you live in, and then if you add this idea of abstraction, then it's really like the possibility that you can describe alternative geometry, even the one that you don't see around you. So that specific lecture that got me interested in the first place was about non-Euclidean geometry. That for me was really this idea that you can try to imagine a world that you don't see, and you can still try to describe the geometry of the space. So that was, the fascination that I had at the very beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. This is quite magical that there are different kinds of geometries, but initially they seem like opposing each other, but then you learn that they actually help each other because some statements become like natural in different settings, that you can translate them, solve them using different curvatures, different lines.
Yeah.
This is quite magical.
Yeah.
Historically there was this big what I remember from my readings, there was a big fight, a lot of fighting about that. This is not the true geometry.
Because I think it was really kind of mind-blowing. It was really a revolution in the sense that at a certain point you realize that you can... It's really like expanding what people thought it was possible, in the sense that before that was the geometry, that was the absolute truth. And then at a certain point you kind of say, okay, but maybe there could be other possibility, and this expands the realm of possibility. So that's
it's like discovering new continents
exactly.
or new planets and then going to them. But still sitting at your desk. It's incredible. Was your path through like always being fascinated by geometry, I guess like Euclidean in high school, then this non-Euclidean stuff, the lecture, going through school, going through university, was it always easy and smooth, or like with a lot of perturbations?
No, I wouldn't say it was easy, but I don't think anybody doing a PhD can say that it's easy, or if not.
No, definitely not.
So I don't know. During the PhD, I don't think there was a day when I thought, oh, this is so easy. No. So no, it was definitely not a easy and straightforward path. Yeah.
Yeah. PhDs are difficult. I'm at the end of mine. But you're not only like professor sitting at your desk, you're also moving a lot around the world as an educator for mathematics.
Yeah.
And you are part of Global South initiative.
Yeah.
Could you tell us what it is and how did you find it?
Yeah. So everything for me started back during the PhD. So I was in London at the time, and I was happy during the PhD time, but still, I was happy with research, but I knew, I think from the very beginning, that I also wanted some new input. I'm very social, and I think I wanted to do something where I felt that I had a more direct impact on a community, and I wanted to do something slightly more, with a bit more direct social impact. And so I think I was open to new direction and new inputs. And I was lucky because in my research community, there was this professor, Balázs Zendroy, who was also an algebraic geometer. So I met him because, again, we were in the same research field. And he had an active network of contact in Africa, in East Africa in particular. He was organizing workshops regularly there. He had a lot of contact with local professors. And so it was really kind of easy for me to start, in the sense that at a certain point in a workshop during a coffee break, I approached him and I asked him a bit more about what he was doing and what were the possibilities if I wanted to be involved. And he was really open, and he gave me some advice on possibility to start. And so I had my first few trips in 2018. I went to visit the AIM Center in South Africa, where I supervise the students. And then together with Balázs, with this professor, we organized algebraic geometry workshop in Nairobi, where I also had the opportunity to start interacting with more students, and where I got to know some of the colleagues working in East Africa, so start to have a better idea of their professional realities. And this experience were really fulfilling for me. I really there were a lot of energy coming out of them for me. And so I decided to try to invest a little bit more time into them. And then I started having a little bit of network of my own. And during the time, they really kind of grow in numbers and in scale. Then there was the pandemic, which was a moment of, I guess as for many people in the world, it was a moment of self-reflection. And I really decided that, I was a bit demotivated research-wise, and I wanted to start maybe investing. These activities started more as side activities, and then I decided to really invest a little bit more time into try to make them slightly more professional. And so I started working on a project on a bigger scale, like thinking of possibility of starting a new mathematics master program in collaboration with a team of people in Rwanda, for instance. And at the same time, I also realized that in Amsterdam, there was an interest for this type of activities. Once I talked to the dean of our faculty, the Faculty of Science, about this, and he was really excited. And at the same time, he put together in a meeting all the people in the Faculty of Science that he knew had a project in Africa, because he really wanted to see if it was possible to move from scattered individual initiative to something slightly more structural. And now, after a few years of this development, now I officially serve as coordinator for academic project with the Global South for the Faculty of Science. And the plan is really to start having a bit of a coordinated platform where we can have a little bit more support and funds and coordination in terms of supporting people from the Global South to visit the University of Amsterdam, and vice versa for a student and colleague of the University of Amsterdam that wants to go for educational project of research collaboration in different parts of the Global South, try to have a bit more coordination, because we hope that if we are a bit more coordinating, and if there are more synergies among the different things that we do, then this could try to help like the sustainability of this kind of project in the future, and hopefully have also bigger impact.
Okay. What is something that people may not know? Why is it important? Because the state of mathematical education in the world is not known to everyone, but why is it important to connect with them? Or not? What are things that people don't know?
I think I have, for me, there are two data that kind of stick in my mind. One is that it's really, we think of the academic community as a very international community, and it's true. We both are in Amsterdam, but I'm Italian, you are Polish, and
yes.
we're
speaking English.
And we are speaking English with each other, and we are constantly surrounded by colleagues from different places. But in the end, it's not exactly truly international, truly global. And then I was reading that...
what do you mean by this, that it is not truly global?
In the sense that if you look at the institution that release doctoral degrees, these are concentrating in very few places in the world, mainly in Europe and in the US. It's impressive. I think I was reading recently that almost 50% of every PhD is released by institution in the US and in the UK alone. So
how many? How much?
50%.
50%?
Yeah.
USA and UK alone?
Yeah. So if you include Europe, then basically a large majority of...
but it doesn't mean that for American and English people.
No. I got a PhD in the UK, right? So it's...
yes.
But... So it means that there are a huge part of the world. A colleague working in development studies told me that people sometimes refer to the Global South as the majority world, because it's where the majority of the population are actually coming from. And Africa, for instance, is this huge continent, and I always like to... So one of the other data that always stick with me is that by 2025, more than 1/3 of the population by 2050, 1/3 of the population under 24 will be in Africa.
Okay.
So it's really again, people usually call Africa the continent of the future, and where the youth of the future will coming from. So you have this huge number of talented young minds that are trying to get access to better possibility of education, and still there are very, very few places in Africa where you can do a competitive PhD program in mathematics. There are some, but it's... So for me, it's... what it's always now I've supervised several students coming from different African countries, and they're always very talented, very motivated, but it's really, you realize that if you did a master scholarship, if you did a master program somewhere in Africa and you want to continue with a PhD, your path is much more complicated and full of challenges compared to someone that did a master and wants to continue with a PhD at the University of Amsterdam, for instance. So it's really, at the moment, there is not equal access of opportunities. Yes. So that's... and then, so I think that one reason is really like, there are, at the moment, there are not equal access to opportunity. We have, especially if you look at Africa, you have this huge continent where the population of the future will come from, and at the moment there are really limited access to high quality training. But on the other side, that there is also a very utilitaristic point of view. Why should the University of Amsterdam invest more in internationalization? And I think that it's really like benefit from the fact that talents is clearly everywhere. We want to be able to attract talents, and at the moment we're really like not looking at the huge parts of the world.
Yes,
where
this is something what I also believe, that like skills and talents are like uniformly distributed across the world. Unfortunately, opportunities and resources are not. So even if a person has enormous potential to grow, without a place and good resources and accumulation of knowledge from last many centuries, it's almost impossible to do any step forward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Does it mean that there is a risk that we will lose mathematical knowledge within this century? If our population is getting older, and then teaching and mathematics preserves itself by teaching the next generation, but if there won't be enough people to learn the exponentially growing mathematics, then there will be a crash, and then people who could learn it are not here.
I don't know if there will be a crash, but I have heard that, for instance, I heard the argument that we should try to work more with African institutions because it's where we will scout for talented students. So, and I know there are already a few places. I think I talked to a colleague that was from a university in East Germany. They said that they were already struggling a little bit to have enough PhD students. And
in Germany?
Maybe it was a small university in East Germany, and they said that they would really like now try actively to recruit students from outside of their outside of the region, outside of the country, and also outside of the continent. So I think that, in Europe the population is getting older and older, and so the population from the youth of the future will come probably from another continent. So how this will impact really the development of mathematics, that's, I don't know, it's probably hard.
It would be sad. We work so hard on our PhDs, our papers, and like this is already like not many people read it because not many people are connected to the specialization and the theory to that. But then it could just disappear. It's scary thought. Especially for someone finishing the PhD. I'm just writing my own dissertation. Scary. Oh, this is a good question. Mathematics is about solving problems. How do you approach overcoming difficulty of a problem?
That's tough, but I try to. First I talk to people. I try to go to colleagues that I think should be kind of familiar with the techniques that maybe there is a problem that involves a certain set of techniques, and I'm going to colleagues that I think should be familiar with this kind of technique and should be able to understand the problem, because again, I think we work on something that is so specialized that there are very few people that can actually understand the problem in the first place. So I go to these people and I try to explain the problem and see if they have advice. Also for me to gauge if it's really like sometimes it could be something stupid that you're stuck, but actually something that it's not as complicated and you're just over not seeing something, or maybe you're not familiar with everything in the literature. So I first go to these people
because one cannot be familiar with everything.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
It's
so
exponentially growing.
Yeah,
and reading it is very, very slow.
Exactly. So I try to go around and see, and at times just doing this exercise solve the problem because someone has read a paper that you still haven't read where there is a solution, of someone have encountered the problem before and there is a solution ready, and or at times then it's not, because maybe it's really a problem that nobody knows how to solve at the moment. But still, maybe through this conversation we might have get some input on maybe something that is not exactly the same problem, but something similar, and maybe you can try to study that. So I try to read something, even if I know that it's not necessarily what I need, but still try to get a little bit of an inspiration. At times, I also like to leave the problem for a few days, or try to leave it there, think about something else, and then go back with a fresh mind and try to go back into it. I do write a lot, so I'm really like, if I have to think, I have to write. So I constantly write, even the things that are not working. I try to say, this doesn't work because of this reason and this reason, and so it's a bit of a chaotic process, and then I try to go and I proceed by iteration, doing always the same things, and after a while, usually with time, then at a certain point, at a certain point you realize that something started to work, and then as soon as at least you get something working, then you can proceed.
An avalanche of things.
Yeah. At times you keep being stuck. Because that also happens. So.
Yes. So it's like a very chaotic process, and I bet it's emotionally draining.
Yeah.
How do you keep your tools, your body, your mind in shape when you have to go often through many hardships for longer periods of time before anything is like visible?
Yeah. I think it was very important, and this was a process, and I think during the PhD was especially tough because it's also maybe the first time you're really working on something that is really hard. But I think it's really, because it's really easy to make it a matter of identity. So I'm the problem that I'm trying to solve, and it's really, and again, we use only our mind, so I think it's really easy to and I probably a lot of mathematicians, otherwise you wouldn't have been. I'm very cerebral. I am my mind, right? So
what does cerebral mean?
Cerebral? I don't know if it's maybe it's not a good English word, but
I never heard it.
I'm just in my mind.
Okay.
It's in my body,
just lays
mind.
Down
No, it's cerebral from the brain. So
cerebral cortex or something.
Yeah,
like
exactly. So you're. In my body-mind connection, I'm much more in my mind than in my body, and so it's really hard for me to identify my whole being with my capacity of understanding something, and so it's really frustrating when you are stuck on something that you don't know how to solve for years. As during the PhD, I think it's really impactful on not. It's really hard not to make it impact your whole being, and
here we go again. I still don't understand this. Yes, this is a feeling.
So for me, it was really important to realize, to put a certain distance at a certain point, so you're not just your brain trying to understand this very specific algebraic geometry problem. You are much more than that. Your mind is much more than that, and more in general, you as a person. And I don't know, I started doing yoga a little bit during the PhD, and there is this old philosophy about connecting more your body and try to get to, I don't know, to understand.
To be more coherent, pun intended.
Yeah, exactly. and start experiencing the world a little bit in a multi-dimensional way.
Yeah, to be more embedded.
Yeah. So, and then I think as a consequence, then all the usual advice that you get are held. Try to be more balanced and try to have a good social circles. Try to do a lot of things outside of mathematics. Try to remember that there is a word out there, and I think that's what helps and what keeps me going. And also, it's always, in the end, it's always a matter of perspective. Of course, it's the whole word for you because you're thinking very deeply on something for a long amount of time. But then you realize that it's this very tiny corner of a very huge field in a very huge ocean of scientific knowledge. And as soon as try to put a little bit of perspective. And
and after you finish a big difficult project, you prove all the theorems and you write the paper, you look at this and you say, it's trivial. It just took 5 years. Because we mathematicians have this habit to use trivial to mean done.
All right. And I think it was also, for me, again, this a bit of a social calling in the end that I always had, or I tried to do something that was a bit more impactful also for really a physical community of people. That was really important because I think that it was so, what we do is so mentally draining and emotionally draining, but at times, I also wanted to have something more out of it, that it was, you arrive at the end and you realize that maybe you finish a paper and there are so very few people in the world that can actually understand it. And I don't know, at least for me personally, it was important to balance it a little bit with also something that was a bit more, this is actually having a direct impact or trying to have a direct impact on a physical community of people. And it's also why I like teaching. For me, I think it was much better I had a much better approach with research after I started also have other responsibility and start teaching a little bit. And what it's usually, people usually describe the dream as I just have a research job. I don't have anything else to do. I'm just focusing on research 100%. But for me, that was not the dream. I think it was...
this is a picture also that I have of you. Someone who is part of community, and this is the best thing that we have this person, because it's always like more bright around. Yeah. I learned a lot of networking and being nice around people, and also taking more satisfactions from community building instead of just sitting alone with papers from 40 years ago. No, I think for me the idea of a community was always crucial, both in my research community. I think, as I said, as soon as I have something, I first go to my community and see what do they think about it, and feeling that I was not alone, but there was really like mine was a tiny contribution. It's in a much bigger body of knowledge that was being created. So that for me was really important. And then more in general, we're part of an academical community, of a scientific community, and and humankind.
So that was always very important for me. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I really enjoyed listening to your answers. So the last question, one question. Where can people find you for professional reasons, like a website and...
Yeah, I have a website that is linked on the University of Amsterdam website, where I try to keep track of my future projects. I'm not very social in the sense that I don't have social media and stuff. So even though it's tips that I keep hearing that I should be more active on Twitter and stuff, or former Twitter, but
I don't like those advices.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not. So I think my website is where I try to keep track of all the things I do. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
It was a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks a lot. I'm honored to be the first guest of the podcast.
Hope not the last.